Hey, I just wanted to take a minute and talk about VEXAGON. I released a full length a couple of weeks ago, over a month now, called Disastronaut, that I spent better part of 2 years working on. And some of the tracks and things that were going to go into that wound up not making it onto the final record, and it turned into. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about the record. It started when it started in February 2018. My buddy Nick Smith from Tennessee mailed me a handheld. Hang on. He mailed me this um, and some software that I could record with, because at the time I didn't have anything that I could record with. After basically goofing around with the software, trying to figure out how to make music on it, because I'd grown up with a studio in my house and was comfortable using one, but it was software I'd never used, and I was living in a new space I'd never been in. I'd never recorded anything in it. So anyway, the first song that came together was Utopia. I wanted to blend using the 4-track recorder and getting raw tracks from my bass amp with electronic and synthesized elements, and drum samples, and I wanted to blend those things in a way that to me was new. Um, I'm under no illusion that the sound that resulted is novel or brand new to me, or to anyone else, but it was something I'd never done. I played in heavy bands for a long time. I still do, still am, and so what came out of that turned out to be something that really spoke to me, and that I felt a connection to, and I felt could be a strong medium for um, conveying ideas I wanted to convey, for making sound and sonic textures and things, and writing songs that I really wasn't able to in the heavy bands that I've been playing in. When VEXAGON started, I was playing in a band called Night Gallery that was a two-piece where I played bass. I think I played bass in everything that I've played in. And that was winding down. It was a two-piece band, and the drummer was moving away, so that puts things at a halt. I wrote Utopia, or most of it. I included the original demo version with an expanded version of the song that I put out. It's on Bandcamp, because I wound up having to later go back and retrack all the acoustic elements, or the raw elements anyway, the guitar and the bass and the vocals. Talk about that later, or in a different video if this gets too long. Anyway, at the time when this started, I had a dear family member who was very ill, and that was on my mind all the time. And there was a lot of heavy life stuff happening at the time. It happens with everyone in adult life. And I'm grateful to have been able to play music for long enough that writing songs, I wasn't starting from square one when it came to making art out of things like that, but I was definitely starting over, and it was exciting, but also completely daunting to make music in this way. So when Utopia came together, and I had other ideas and other things I wanted to do, and the barrier to me was technology and being able to make it happen. I think that's the barrier for a lot of people. And I got lucky. I got very lucky with the recording setup that I had. I don't know if you can see at all, but this stereo right here, you can't hardly see it, but my buddy Josh Hilburn gave me that a few years ago for fixing his amplifier and the speaker towers here. They're a Kenwood, like a home entertainment, TV, whatever system stereo. My old manager at a used bookstore I used to work at gave me those. My buddy Nick Smith loaned me the handheld recorder and gave me the software. And my wife had an old netbook laptop that I put the software on, and it wound up being that's what I made the record with. I didn't have to. I'm extremely grateful that I didn't have to purchase all this stuff, because I wouldn't have known where to begin. I wound up just using what I had. And out of frame here, I'll try to show this. You know what? I'll just show it now. But my bass rig, you can see that it's a Hartkey LH500 head with a couple other things in the head unit, and acoustic. I believe that's a 406 cab. It's a 2x15. I'm trying to make sure I can see this. Pedal board with some different stuff on it. There's my bass and my guitar. I can talk about all that stuff at a different time. I'd like to talk about the tech aspects at a later date, but I don't want to make an hour-long video of rambling that some maybe people that don't play music wouldn't care to hear about. Utopia was the first song, and I wanted to base the songs around my bass guitar because that's what I've played most of my life, and it's the instrument I feel most comfortable writing on. I played in a hardcore band years ago called Naomi, and almost all those songs were written on my bass first before guitar stuff was ever really worked out. Most of it worked that way, and the Night Gallery was all bass. There was no guitar, and it was all written on the bass. And so I think I'd been in that mode for a few years, and Utopia, it's a very bass-driven song. The second one that I wrote for the record was Would You Want To, which is ironic because it wound up being, I think, the very last song that was completed almost 2 years later. It took me such a long time to finish that song, but it's the meat of it is the bass line, the bass notes, and it built from there. And those two songs have very similar themes. They're both about mass media and consumption of media. Utopia is basically the graphic from the cover of the expanded edition is taken from the film Videodrome, which is I don't know how to say it, but the thing that made me start thinking about all of this. The film deals with so much, consumption, television, and all these. Just go watch it. But Utopia was sort of my first take on that, and the just first pass. This is what I gleaned from it, and this is a song based around those ideas, and also sonically, that to me created something that felt like the atmosphere of the film, even if it doesn't sound like the film. Then Would You Want To, lyrically, I had the lyrics for the song pretty early on, at least most of them, and it was more directly about the fact that in reality, not in the film, but in our day-to-day, I think that we're taught things and we're told things, not necessarily subliminally, but just subconsciously, that we're not told in an overt way, but we are kind of guided to desire certain things and desire a life that looks a certain way that often is marked and just defined by consumption, really conspicuous consumption. And the song is about a revelation I had, not a very big one, but just the idea that I think I was probably talking to my wife when I thought of this, but that at the end of the day, what I really want out of life and what I want my life to look like isn't something that I'm going to find on television or that I'm going to buy into and become happy with. That's not what I think anyone ultimately, as a human being, desires, is a life of endless cycle of consumption. And it takes all kinds, all kinds of people and make the world go around. But I don't think that anyone, at the end of the day, is purely a consumer. I think everyone has something to offer the world, and has things that they can create, rather than taking in. They can create and give back to the world around them. And also, the song was part of the point. It's just that consumption satisfies to a point, but there is a level of our humanity that it really can't ever touch. Anyway, the third song that I wrote, I guess I'm just going to go through the songs here. The third song, and I got to this third one within about a month of starting this project, was Keep Away. And I wrote it just a few days after Would You Want To. It's just, I actually wrote it one day when I was off of work and my wife was at work. I wound up getting to the demo stage of having vocals and everything tracked, and the song worked out. From that morning I had nothing. By the time she got home from work, I think it was 4 or 5 o'clock, I had the song basically as it is, although I retracked everything and sort of reworked it. But it's very simply just about being in love with my wife. It's about our relationship, and I could just spew cliches and just be very sappy. I'd rather not get into that, but I feel like we have a special relationship that I value very much, and she's a wonderful, special person that's just wholly unique that I'm very thankful for. And the song is just a sort of a public letter from me to her about that. That's all. Let's see, Keep Away. Groundhog Days. Actually, no. All Hallows was the next song that I wrote. I should have had this together. I wrote All Hallows in the summer, late summer of 2018, and it took me a while to get it completed. Uh, During that period between March and the end of the summer, there were a lot of different songs that came up and I worked on, or things that kind of I was trying to feel the project out and decide what I wanted to do with it or where I wanted to take it, because at the time, there was no name or real visual vibe, not really, and things just I didn't have enough material to do much with. So I did a bunch of covers during that time that I'm still planning on releasing. I'd like to do, I have a list that I'd like to get through, and once that's complete, I'd like to go ahead and put it out. Although there are a couple of covers that will be coming out sooner than that I've done with friends recently. Excited to excited to put that out. It's not quite finished yet, but I'm very excited about it. It's really cool to be able to engage with people that I just think well of and value as artists, that I think are doing a great job giving back to their community through their art. Lots of covers, and again through this period, of course, from spring through the summer, life continues to happen, and there's just in, I don't know if it's just Western society, but it seems like things change drastically every couple of months. It's at least on some level, it seems like things change and then they're just gone, and sometimes it's hard to think about. But when I started writing All Hallows, that song really, um, the general vibe came to me pretty quickly. Um, I don't remember the day or when it happened, but the basic chords and just the idea came to me, along with some of the early lyrics in it, and the song wrote itself pretty quickly. It really didn't take a whole lot of effort from me. Mixing it was, I, I should, as an aside, really quickly, the way that I record and the way I do everything, I tend to write as I'm mixing, and I write to the general mix that I have, and I wound up retracking things and moving, but I don't just write the entire song out and then record it like a lot of people do, or have done, I guess, with the luxury of digital recording. I don't, have to do that. Uh, I'm not bound by that. There's no way this project would be happening if I had to do that. Um, All Hallows was finished right before Halloween in 2018, which was that month is without a doubt the happiest month of my entire life, filled with the most joy. I got married. My wife and I got married then. I said wife when I wrote Keep Away. At the time, we were only dating, and actually in April, 2 months after that, was when we became engaged. And my buddy Nick Smith, who loaned me this, actually came down to spend some time with us and was there when I proposed and we became engaged, which was awesome. It was a beautiful thing. Um, I was so nervous. And they were also there at the wedding in in October, which we had the wedding. I had to work for a couple of days, and then we went on the honeymoon, and we went up to Blue Ridge and just hung out in the mountains for a couple of days. And I think right after I got back was when I actually posted All Hallows. And I'd posted Keep Away previously, I believe, under my own personal music at the time. Um, kept working, and then December came, November, December, and I had continued to work on music through that time. But I actually remember where I was standing, and what was going on and what the weather was like and everything when Groundhog Days sort of came to me, or it popped in my head or whatever. I was waiting to clock out, and it just, the beginning of the song and the song, the bulk of it, minus the lyrics, just sort of popped in my head, and I thought I really need to. I'd like to put that down and work with it, because I really just enjoy it. And it wound up being a track that to me really stands out on the record as being immediately more, one, sort of pop centered or pop centric, but also more optimistic, even if it's not an overly, um, I wouldn't say just overly positive or cheery sounding song. It just has just go listen to it. It sticks out from the others to me, and not in a bad way. There are definitely many commonalities between that song and all the others that ties them together, and at least to my taste, and that was why I felt comfortable putting them together as a group. And I started working on Groundhog Days. It took me the better part of a year to finish it. although I had the bulk of it done within a day or two, I went back to it and went back to it countless times. Through all of this, I lived in downtown Augusta, and I think I got Groundhog Days to a point where I felt like it was a solid song in February. I kept writing. And then within a couple of months, we wound up moving. My family wound up moving to South Carolina, where to be near some of my other family. And if you look back at well, I'll get to that in a second. We moved here, and for the longest time, there wasn't really space for me to set up all of my recording stuff as I had it. And I should mention, at my old house in Augusta where I was recording, my recording setup was the stereo and the speakers on a small entertainment center in my living room, and I would prop my computer up on a cardboard filing cabinet in the middle of the floor and sit on the floor on a pillow with the speakers, aimed somewhat with my ears somewhere in the middle. But I would sit in the middle of my living room floor with an audio, an 1/8 inch to RCA going out of my computer to the back of the stereo into the CD input, which is just on some level unthinkable, but to a professional. But I guess I'm not. And it's just, when I think back on it, just countless hours with my knees hurting, down in the floor. I couldn't really put a desk there where it was, but the speakers and everything, because we used to use the stereo for the television and for video games and whatnot. So it was a good spot to be able to record, and I had my bass cab in the next room back then. Tracked a bunch of these songs that way. Wound up moving, and we moved in the summertime, and I think it took until sometime in the fall before I got all this recording stuff set back up again. I moved here to be near a family member who was ailing in health, because I knew this was my chance to come see them and be nearby, because I should also mention that during this entire recording process, I was working a job where I worked 50, 60 hours a week, an hour from my house, and I was almost never home. I had only one child when I started this project, and now, 2 years in, my son just turned 1 year old. I have 2 children now, so the past year of working on this, I've had one older son, this job, 60 hours a week, an hour from home, 2 nights of class per week, where I don't get to come home on those nights. I don't know what all I've said, but and an infant son. It has left, there have been lots of periods where I just didn't have any time to work on this at all. And that's been, I've never resented it, but it just made it take a long time to get this project done. Or not done, but just to get it at a point where I could publish music and then have any sort of catalog and then forward momentum. And during last summer, after we moved here, I think that was 4 or 5 songs pretty well in hand. And the family member that I moved here to be near passed away. And I wound up making the Drone Dialogues 1 track. I didn't, like I said, I didn't have this full setup, and I couldn't really. I, I wanted to make a song, but I knew I was operating in a limited capacity. So I decided to really go full bore into a sort of field recording type project with the 4-track, using some things I wrote on my guitar and some audio that I had recorded of me with my family member. I think a year or two. Actually, no, it was only a year before. But and then some audio I recorded here, and then laid over all of that was the a few batches of poetry that I had written on my own time during the last phases of this person's life. And I just made I don't know what to call it besides a sound project, although that sounds kind of strange to me, to make this composition out of that. And the audio quality for the dialogue is not great. Everything I did on headphones. I didn't have my stereo hooked up or anything to do that. It's all very, I'm very proud of it, or I'm proud of it, but at the same time, I realize that if you play it through a high fidelity sound system, it's not going to have the character that I want most of my music to have, for sure. At the same time, I felt it was really important to do that, and to number it as number one, because I would like to continue that. I actually have continued that, but in a different direction. Actually, just this afternoon, I was working on Drone Dialogues 2, and I'll get to that later. But anyway, sometime last fall, I wound up getting this room set up for recording more easily and with the full stereo, but also just it probably doesn't look like much, but anyone that records knows that your space matters big time, and the ease of access and the flow that you have is very important. The sort of log jam that occurs, at least with me, mentally, when I don't have things set up this way, it's very hard for me to be productive. So it's just a little corner in a side room in our house, but it's been invaluable to me to be able to have this space. The fall came, and I was I don't even know how to say that, but it's fall last year. Just life continued to happen, and dealing with being near where my family member lived, but also them not being there, and it just life changed. Like life changes, it happens, and I continued writing for this, and I think the song Landmine was the next one. I can't recall which one was next, but I think it was Landmine. That had actually been the music, all but the lyrics for that, was going to be Drone Dialogues 2. I wrote it, I just remembered this now, but I think I wrote that in the spring of last year sometime. It was a track that I put together. I really liked it. It was derived, actually behind me, this Emma Ruth Rundle record, Marked for Death. I pulled that out because I was working on what now is the Drone Dialogues 2 track, but I'd been listening to her for the past couple of years, and you can probably hear in the music of Landmine, if you're familiar with her music, that there's just some of the character spoke to me, and I feel like once I was done with the song, it reminds me of some things that she's done, which I'm proud of, and other artists as well that are more singer-songwriter oriented. I grew up listening to James Taylor and things like that, but and someone else may think that's not accurate at all. That's fine. Anyway, I wound up writing the lyrics and so forth, and working them into the song, and leaving it as it was. I didn't want to retrack everything. I didn't want to have to, make an entirely new song. I can tell it's getting, sun's starting to go down up there. Um, and Groundhog Days was close to being finished by this point. All Hallows was done. The last two songs to come together, I can't remember which one came first, but Long Way Down and the title track. Long Way Down just came to me very quickly one day, and that's another song where it went from just an idea to a at least a demo song within a day. I had a fairly clear idea of what I wanted to do with it, and it's a fairly simple song. There's really not too much going on. I've never been one for I don't know. I just I can't really solo, and I don't typically write songs around that. Although being able to use synth elements has been really cool, because I can write things out, and like in Groundhog Days, you can go listen to that. But having that kind of option has been really cool. Anyway, Long Way Down was written pretty quickly, and then around this time I started, this is the spring of this year, or the winter really. Around that time I started really getting a solid idea of what I wanted to do album-wise. The songs I wanted to include. A few months, or maybe in November, December, my wife bought me a big dry erase board that I had a grid that I would check off over time for all the songs and all the parts and things that needed to be done for them. I should add, I'm so bad about telling a story in a linear fashion, but through all of